here. It's the 24th of February, Friday morning, and it's good to have your company. And thank you indeed for being part of our ministry and our mission and our apostolate here at Radio Maria Ireland. Thanks so much to George. George comes in there a Friday morning to do a little bit of continuity. It's lovely to have live interaction there and a live presence at the microphone for you and to accompany you just between Mass and Chatechesis. I know it's a much more pleasant form of radio broadcasting when you know you have company with you. And many of you, I think, maybe have bumped into George hither and yon. If you want to come and visit the studio, you can come up and meet us all. Come and say hello. You know, we have our adoration going on continuously, 24/7 for the season of Lent. Started Ash Wednesday. Please God, will continue right the way through to Holy Thursday. And it's lovely to meet some new adorers coming in to see us. Belinda popped in yesterday. We met her at the Divine Mercy Conference, and she came in to do some adoration and had her own little quiet time with the Lord, and came upstairs and had a look around and saw the facility and was meeting and greeting all the familiar voices, putting faces on them here in the building too. So do keep that in mind if you'd like to come and make a little pilgrimage to us here during the season of Lent for to come and meet and say hello, but to maybe attend and pray a little with the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament as well. Do let us know you're coming. We would love to write that in and to cover an hour or two or whatever you're free to do. Some people, come from some distance and spend the whole night here in adoration. It's a lovely warm building. There's a kitchen there. There's plenty of bathroom facilities too. So it's a ideal setting, if you like, for a longer period of adoration too. During the day, the place is kind of a busy outpost. There's a lot of activity going on in around the halls. The phones are buzzing and so on. We do our best to try to keep the noise levels down, and we keep you don't hear the radio in the oratory, except that we're getting prepared for a broadcast. So we try to keep it as prayerful certainly as we can. But it's a busy happening place. There's a lot of activity going on, so factor that in as well. But please do come and bring some friends, and you'll be very welcome to share, because the radio belongs to you. It's a bit like your radio parish community, and all of you so kindly help us and support us, make it possible. And so it's an open door to those who like to come and visit and pray and meet us here. We'd be glad to hear from you and welcome you as well. But again, do let us know, because it's handy to make little preparations to be aware that we can expect you as well. So if you're looking for us, if you're new to the radio, if you're looking to where to find us, we're junction 10 on the M50. If you're driving, I think the number 53 bus from the city centre will bring you out to the Red Cow Hotel. The Lewis will bring you to the Red Cow Lewis stop, and from there it's about a 10-minute walk back under the Red Cow Lewis stop is tucked into the sort of a part of the junction of the M50 and the Naas dual carriageway there. It's a big interchange. So you have to go, when you come off the train, you have to go under the footbridge, and then there's a walkway in the central reservation of the Naas dual carriageways, bring your walking in towards Dublin. And then you head over the footbridge, you'll see the Red Cow Hotel on your right, and come back down the ramp, go around the side of the Red Cow Hotel, look across the road, and you'll spot us there. So it's if you're on foot as well. So not too difficult to find. We'll always be happy to give you directions. Now, just Roisin very kindly dropped in the Irish Catholic. It comes out of a Thursday, I think, usually, and just some lovely articles in there. I see a reference to Bishop David O'Connell. He's the Cork-born bishop who was auxiliary bishop in the Diocese of Los Angeles. And Bishop O'Connell from Glenmire in Cork joined us here on Radio Maria on St. Patrick's Day in 2021. As it turned out, Aisling Armstrong, who was working here for us for a time, Aisling Barco now, of course, was on a mission with Net Ministries and working there in Los Angeles, and met Bishop O'Connell. And when she came back, from that mission, we got in touch with her and offered her a place here, and she came and joined us. And then afterwards, she was telling us about her exploits and her missionary work, and all those are available as podcasts, so you can listen back to those. You scroll through our podcast resource there. There's so many of them there. But it was suggested by Aisling for St. Patrick's Day that year, 2021, to invite Bishop O'Connell on to join us. Excuse me. And we were in the middle of lockdowns and all those things, so the Bishop was delighted to come on, and he spent an hour on the radio here with us. We had a little panel group around, Sarah and Aisling, myself and John Carlin, and we were speaking about matters of faith and formation and evangelization and raising some very interesting questions. Sarah did a wonderful job of hosting that program, and Aisling likewise. But we had a lovely conversation with the late bishop, and he certainly impressed me as a man of deep faith and of deep pastoral concern for his people. He was well known for his love for the poor and immigrants in Los Angeles, and especially victims of gun violence. So he would have worked certainly in some of the poorer parishes and dealt with the large influx from Latin America, of course, of the Latino community, and everything that accompanied the problems and all of those difficulties that accompanied those peoples looking for safer and looking for hope, really, in seeking residence there in the United States. So the bishop was immersed in all of that activity, and hence the terrible tragedy of the fact that he was shot and killed last Saturday. And a murder investigation is underway. So very, very sad indeed to hear that. But certainly a lovely man, and we played back the interview that we had with him, that chat we had with him on Sunday night in commemoration of him. And please God, we'll schedule it in as well for St. Patrick's Day this year as well, a couple of weeks' time. We're going to be celebrating all things St. Patrick and all the blessings indeed of our ministries in and around Ireland. Please God, we'll line up some good speakers for you during that novena in honour of St. Patrick from the 9th through to the 17th or the 8th, however that week falls, and invite you to be part of that lovely occasion too. But what we'll do, we'll play that back, please God, on St. Patrick's Day, that interview with Bishop O'Connell. And I was thinking we might actually put it on in the small hours of the morning as well, that if there's any listeners in Los Angeles, and we'll let them know, and we'll advertise it, please God, on social media, that they might like to listen in to that. So it was a really, really endearing conversation, I must say. So may God have mercy on him, may all his good deeds go with him, and may he rest in peace as well. There's a fine article in the Irish Catholic there, as I mentioned, a lovely picture, maybe I can show it to the camera here, of Bishop David. He's actually standing outside a parish church there and is speaking with people, and a lovely smile on his face, and engaging, of course, in his ministry there. Excuse me. And certainly has done fabulous work in the Archdiocese, and a beautiful testimony there, commemorating him from the Archbishop of Los Angeles, Jose Gomez, who was very upset by the news, naturally, of course. But there we are. He hadn't lost his Cork accent either. A bit of Corkonian in there still. So lovely to hear that. Speaking of Cork, excuse me. Speaking of Cork, I'll be back to my home territory again, but West Cork, please God, tomorrow and Sunday. So anyone in and around the parish of Bantry, way down in West Cork there, beautiful part of the country, all of West Cork, Kerry, just gorgeous, like Donegal, the Connemara, just the west of Ireland is just so beautiful from north to south. But we'll be down in Bantry. Eileen O'Driscoll, who is our promoter there in and around the southern counties in the Archdiocese of Cashel and Emly, is busy connecting with parishes and organising trips there. So as a promotion, we will be in the parish of Bantry this Saturday evening, tomorrow evening, and Sunday morning. So the 6:15 Vigil Mass tomorrow. I was just chatting with Father Martin O'Driscoll, the parish priest, a little earlier, and everything is arranged. Please God, they've been very good, and looking forward to meeting us down there. So we'll be there at for the 6:15 Vigil Mass in Bantry, and 9 a.m. I think it is in the morning. Let me double check, and 12. Let me just double check those times. But the three masses, please God, we will be joining down in Bantry. So if you're in and around anywhere near Bantry, please do come and share with us and join with us. So yes, 9 a.m. Sunday morning and 12 noon. And as I understand from Father Martin, there's a cluster of parishes in and around Bantry, and the priests are kind of spread all over a large area of parishes around there. Father Anthony Buckley was one name I came across there. Let's see if I have some of the other names there as well. I'm not sure if I do, of the priests there in Bantry. Oh, maybe I have it here. in the various parishes, because gosh, yes, they're Cahara, Bantry Parish, Cahara, I think, which is out in the peninsula. Again, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Goleen, Minter Voira Parish, and Skull. Oh gosh, Skull reminds me, a lovely friend down there for a time. I'm sure she's gone to God. The name isn't coming back to me. She was a lovely lady, had a great love for the Legion of Mary, and wrote to Frank Duff many years ago asking some guidance and direction, and Frank had exchanged a few letters with her, and whatever difficulty or burden she was going through, she found great relief. And I think after he died, she prayed for his intercession and found great relief as well. So much so that she had sculpted a lovely bust of Frank Duff, which is now in a little to the side of your visiting Cork City and St. Peter and Paul's Parish. Go up along to the left hand side. That beautiful skull is mounted, skull of the parish. The beautiful bust is mounted on a marble pillar, and in commemoration of Frank Duff. He's not yet venerable and not yet a saint. Well, please God, that will certainly come, but great devotion certainly to him. So that was that lady in Skull Parish, Josephine, is it? The surname won't come to me now, I've just gone blank a little bit. But it seems they have a family of parishes there, Skull, Muintavara, Vara, Bhaire, Muintavara, Goleen, and Cara and Bantry. And Father Miles McSweeney is there, Father Ben Hodnett, Father John O'Donovan, and Father Anthony Buckley. So I know Anthony as well, and I've met some of the other lads too from time to time. So that's a whole chunk of West Cork there, where, please God, with so few little seeds for Radio Maria, and we'll spread the word down there as well. And nice to see a little ad in the newsletter as well, last week's newsletter. Representatives from Radio Maria will be speaking about the station and their work at all Masses in Bantry Church next weekend. And the Mass is live streamed on bantryparish.ie if anybody fancies tuning in there as well. So our promotion continues in earnest. We have various other places lined up, hoping to get to Limerick. I had a phone call this morning. It would be nice to pop down in Limerick direction. Heading across in the direction of Clonmel. Don't hold me to it now, but we have a couple of parishes penciled in there. Derry as well is penciled in too. And where else had we? Yes, Walkinstown Parish, I think, which is nearest here in Dublin, is also penciled in. I'll let Liz and Steffi update you on all of those activities and those movements around the country. But certainly watch this space. We're doing a lot of travelling around. Now just flicking through the Irish Catholic a little bit more, and again just basking in the great blessing of the Divine Mercy Conference. I'll turn a few more pages here, and lovely pictures of the gathering there, and it says, the Divine Mercy Conference returns with a bang, which is very true, and great to see the Irish Catholic photographer going around again capturing some lovely photos of many people attending the conference there, and people coming from internationally as well. So some lovely smiling faces and very happy and faith-filled looking people there too. So marvellous to see the different stands and the different peoples there, and everything so colourful and so uplifting. So in fairness to the lads in the Irish Catholic, doing great work there, just getting the word out and getting the photos from around the country too. Let me see, there's a nice little picture there in this is the Dominican sisters. Of course, Sister Mara Rose, is she one of those sisters now as well? Or she must be indeed. Is that her there, I think? Lovely group of people there gathered in, I see the bishop is there too, for their catechetical program, Come Follow Me, after their 3-day course. So great to see, fantastic to see all these good people animated and energized by their faith and out there willing to get involved and do a little for the church. Marvellous to see. So lovely photographs there, fantastic to see it, and very uplifting and very encouraging, and more of that please, because there is great work going on all over the place. So I'm just kind of reading the paper in while you're listening on the radio. I see a trip to Lourdes there, a little photograph there too. What else have we got? Bishop Finton there, Cork and Ross. Cork is featuring there again. Carrigaline Parish, they received a presentation of an Eco Congregation Ireland. Not sure exactly what that is, but we'll have to look that up and share it with you too. But well done, good to see it. So no, fantastic. It's always nice. You see, it's kind of like the conference too, to know that you're not alone. We're not alone in the faith, not by a long chalk. And the church has not, withered up and died. That's certainly not true at all. And indeed, there are many people of great faith and great enthusiasm and great energy and zeal still doing marvellous work to spread the gospel. Thanks be to God. Now, can I just reflect and do a few little words, little insight or two on this particular day, the first Friday of Lent. And it's set aside as a day of prayer for victims of sexual abuse. And indeed, it's very good that the church is keeping this in the foreground and using Lent as a moment to express sorrow, to continue on a path of reparation, and to seek always to support and to welcome and to I suppose provide solace and companionship for all victims of any kind of abuse, certainly, but to lament and express deep sorrow, and to continue to express that sorrow and ask forgiveness of victims of especially clerical sexual abuse. So I apologize, and I continue to be at the disposal, and I hope indeed as at least one voice, perhaps there's many indeed, and there's many of us lament this terrible crime and this terrible suffering that so many have had to endure at the hands of those they had trusted. And it's a terrible malaise and a great wound in the heart of the church. And we who seek to be faithful and seek to still offer support and friendship to all who have been affected and wounded, lament this terrible crime and ask forgiveness and seek to pray for you and to pray with you, and indeed to continue to support. Towards Healing is the name of the service that the church has set up in order to support victims of abuse. And indeed, if it is that there are crimes and woundedness yet to be revealed and to be reported, and it's and especially what I hope we have learned, and it's been implanted upon us to see and recognize areas where there may be vulnerability for anyone, and not just in these circumstances, but in any situation, that is children and vulnerable adults, that we have in mind their safeguarding and protecting always, that such a crime never occurs again. And so there are many safeguarding measures in place. We receive constant training and updates and direction in these matters, and policy documents, and there's audits that are put in place now for dioceses and for parishes, that each parish has a safeguarding committee, and there's a long list of areas to be checked and affirmed that these are in place and being monitored, and again that every safeguarding measure that is practically possible is put in place. And we've learned a great deal and have moved forward a great deal in assuring that our churches, our sacristies, our schools, anywhere that's associated with the celebration of the faith and the practice of the faith, parish halls, that these measures are in place. And if it is there is anything untoward or anything that's amiss or awry, that we have the sense of urgency and immediacy to address that, to correct it, to report it certainly too. Excuse me. So we pray and we work hard to ensure that such terrible crimes never recur, and we seek to put in place as many safeguards as are, again, reasonable and practicable, in order that this possibility is eliminated. It's not to say that human nature somehow won't raise this ugliness, and it's like anything. You can't police a thing to the apart from being kind of tyrannical to ensure that human nature won't fall. But certainly every possible measure I know this again that can be taken is certainly being taken, and like that, to offer a sincere apology and to accompany you in prayer and to accompany those who hurt and wounded, those victims particularly, always first, and their families and the community at large too, because we have all suffered in some way from this terrible deep wound and these awful crimes. And maybe to reflect a little bit wider on it, isn't it again so sad to see that our culture seems to be loosening its moral grip in many areas concerning sexuality too. There seems to be a sort of prevailing liberalism that suggests that any and every form of sexual expression can be legitimized. And you have to, in the light of the awful woundedness and the hurt and the abuse that has taken place, to allow that to be brought to bear upon the looser moral standards that we see around us today. We see a huge increase in those who are living together outside of marriage. We see all kinds of lifestyles in relation to sexuality being advocated and commended. And we're left wondering, is there any boundaries anymore? We see a push now in those involved in education to form children in some way in the whole area of pornography. And it seems to the way that's being approached seems to be open to question. I mean, certainly it's an area that needs to be very carefully approach for young people in particular, not to expose them to the harm that can come of that, but to do it in the light of a set of values that is not worldly, it does not admit of a kind of a liberalism, because it seems that we've eroded to some extent our natural inhibitions in regard to that, and we've done the damage ourselves too. Like again, I'm kind of saying this is part of the awful outfall and outcome of a culture that has seen certainly since the 1960s, the sexual revolution, just a terrible loosening of standards, a liberalization, and of a sort of anything goes approach. Where are the boundaries anymore? And so if there are no boundaries, then it seems that we can validate any and every form of sexual expression, to the point that there are many who are equally being abused. The industry of pornography is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and women and children suffer grievously from that. There's wholesale abuse going on, and accompanying that is a slavery. This is what, again, the Pope pointing us to the idea of trafficking and a slavery of women in particular, and possibly men too, and all the accompanying vices that go with that. Because these things can be sort of drug-induced and alcohol-induced, and all kinds of corruption and threats and evil that accompanies the abuse of persons and their bodies. So to be mindful of, and in the context then of what the Church seeks to teach and what Jesus helps us understand, any man who looks at a woman with lust in his heart has already committed adultery with her. And then we see a wholesale expression of these things. I was working on the computer the other day, and a thing came up, and I thought, where the heck did this come from? On this blessed phone, these things come at you, and the secular media and the press, magazines, TV, these things come at you. I was visiting a house once, I mentioned that before, and family wanted to watch the lotto results or something, and as soon as the telly came on, there was something provocative and suggestive, and they were duly embarrassed, and I was too, and we're like, where do we look? Have we lost all of these boundaries? Where have these safeguards gone? And it's just an enormous task for teachers, for parents especially, and for priests who seek to be faithful, to try to live according to these standards in the first place, but also to teach them to pass them on. That any and every formation in human sexuality surely should have as its norm chastity, and not chastity in an arcane or archaic medieval understanding, but in a very wholesome understanding of the correct integration of our human sexuality and its use in its proper context, because it's a gift from God. It's a sharing in God's life-giving love and the capacity to bring life into the world, and it is properly and duly expressed in the context of married life and married love. Jesus, as the bridegroom, again laying down his life for his church. It's a total bodily commitment, a giving of his flesh for us, not expressed obviously in that way sexually, but even more so in the giving of himself. This is my body given for you. So in the context of married life and love, it's the same one flesh communion that takes place in that expression. And this is the rightful context, because if we've learned anything from the terrible scandals, is the sacredness of this gift and the preciousness of this gift and the correct and right ordered expression of this gift in the context of husband and wife who have committed themselves one to the other and are sharing at this level of intimacy that respects their loving commitment towards one another and is open to life. And that's the proper and right ordered, chaste expression of this gift. And so it is that's how we can see then on that measure and on that basis how we have drifted and lost sight of this precious and sacredness that applies to our human sexuality. And any and every form of expression now seems to be, put upon us. So if we're teaching our children then in a graphic and a way that's unsuited to their age and their capacity and activates them in some way prematurely, then surely that qualifies as a form of abuse too. It's worth asking that question. Can it be indeed that by exposing young children, now you want to form them and educate them, sure, and I understand that, and that seems to me to make eminent sense, but at a young age, pre-pubescent age, again, we have to ask some very responsible and serious questions in relation to how we impart that information and how we teach them, and whether or not it's even necessary at all at such a young age, and indeed whether the context of the school is the best environment for that, whether the home and the parents should be the primary educators of their children. So it's not to say that some good relationships and sexuality education is necessary for children in school. My view as a chaplain in school was when they reach a little bit more maturity, at the age of maybe 14 or 15, that conversation could be entered into a little bit more fully, and again with due limits and that, and very important to address that for our teenagers particularly. So trying to find that balance and trying to stay within very safe limits and boundaries, and trying to communicate the blessing and beauty and gift that is our sexuality, and to order the instruction and formation of young people particularly in a correct way, and to help them see that the more liberal approach to these things leads to great woundedness and great hurt, and like the fire in the fireplace, when you take it outside the fireplace out of its proper context, it will burn the house down. And so it is that the unchaste expression of our sexuality will lead to again a woundedness that, again, our nature, God's grace is so necessary to bring us back. So again, with that in mind, for our day of prayer for the victims of these crimes and this abuse, please God that we can see that we've learned, and we're trying to mature in our addressing these questions and these situations with a view to safeguarding indeed and nurturing this sacredness of this gift in others too. So I hope that helps a little bit. Do please connect in, or do please touch in here and share in the conversation. As always, the number to call, 014123456, the text number 0894672000, and the email here, info@radiomaria.ie. So George is looking after me at the desk here, so you've got a little piece lined up for me there, George. We might pause for a little piece of music, and do please get in touch. You can always write to us too, of course. St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22. We do love to hear from you. So many thanks, George, and we'll be back after a little piece of music.
upon me. Father, let me call thee Father, 'tis thy child returns to thee. Jesus, Lord, I ask for mercy, let me not implore in vain. All my sins I now detest them, never will I sin again. By my sins I have deserved death and endless misery. How with all its pain and torment, and for all eternity. Jesus, Lord, I ask for mercy, let me not implore in vain. All my sins I now detest them, never will I sin again. By my sins I have abandoned right and claim to heaven above, where the saints rejoice forever in an endless sea of love. Jesus, Lord, I ask for mercy, let me not implore in vain. All my sins I now detest them, never will I sin again. See our Savior bleeding, dying on the cross of Calvary. To that cross my sins have nailed him, yet he bleeds and dies for me. Jesus, Lord, I ask for mercy, let me not implore in vain. All my sins I now detest them, never will I sin again. Jesus, Lord, I ask for mercy, let me not implore in vain. All my sins I now detest them, never will I sin again.
Welcome back to Radio Maria Ireland. Beautiful piece, isn't it? And very familiar, of course, to us. And praying God's mercy upon us all on this day of prayer for victims and those suffering from clerical sexual abuse. There was a prayer sent to Archbishop Dermot Martin some little time ago by a person who suffered abuse that it could be shared by parishes, and the prayer was inscribed on a healing stone, a stone which is unveiled at the Eucharistic Congress in 2012, and it has its permanent home now in Lough Derg, which is of course a great place of pilgrimage and of penance and reparation too. And the prayer is beautiful, very short and very simple. Lord, we are so sorry for what some of us did to your children, treated them so cruelly, especially in their hour of need. We have left them with a lifelong suffering. This was not your plan for them or for us. Please help us to help them and guide us, Lord. Amen. So very simple little prayer there. And the tradition now indeed of lighting candles in our parish churches and our cathedrals in commemoration indeed of those victims and all who've suffered abuse, and maybe any kind of abuse too. And that we be again, I hope and pray that some of the fruits of this terrible suffering may be a more acute awareness of our responsibilities and acute awareness of the suffering need of those who have been sorely tried and afflicted, and a mindfulness and again awareness of those who may indeed be suffering, please God, not through the hands of the church, but maybe otherwise too, because that broader sense needs to be kept in mind too, that this is not just confined to one particular body, but this is a human problem and a human burden and a human difficulty, and who knows but that these things happen in families and homes, in clubs and societies and organizations, as has come to light through various revelations and news over the decades, certainly. So it's a more, thinking of it certainly in a broader sense too, and that likewise, as followers of Christ and believers in the Lord, that we have a certain civic duty and responsibility too, to be aware of the sufferings of peoples who might otherwise be victims at the hands of others, and to show great sympathy and empathy, and absolutely take assertive action whenever we how's it described? When somebody reports something, when they make a revelation, when they disclose abuse, again to spring into action, not in any sort of panic mode, but gently supporting the person making the allegation and following through with it with the correct authority, with the Gardaí, with the HSE, and with any other authorities within the context of where the allegation is made. And please God, indeed, I hope we've learned that in earnestness too, that we address these things and not allow them to continue, which again in the light of that too, and this is why I'm kind of reflecting it forward and across, as it were, the area of formation in human sexuality, particularly in our schools, and raising that as a question, to know, like, how is it we are imparting that education, and if it is that some suggestions are being made that the formation in relationships and sexuality is becoming more graphic, and again, is it the sort of material that we should be exposing young people to, and in the context of the whole area of the question of abuse and that, and has the approach that has been made of liberalizing teaching in relation to human sexuality, and the kind of almost unquestioning promotion of things like artificial contraception, without the consideration for the health of the woman, her emotional health and her physical health, and indeed the role of the man to safeguard and protect as husband too. Is it by making these things available we are activating our young people in ways that will do them harm? And I was reading somewhere that it seems to be the case that we have a huge increase in the level of sexually transmitted infections, and that suggests something in its own right. And some of these illnesses are dangerous enough in their own right. They can lead to cancer, even death in some instances, and certainly impair physical well-being and possibly even infertility too. And there seems to be quite a rise in sexually transmitted infections, and so that suggests there is greater promiscuity. And like I say, the fire that's not kept in the fireplace, you take it outside of that, then what are the consequences to that? And then, as we know, lamentably and so tragically, again, the liberal expression of human sexuality, contraception, if it does fail, and some elements of that too, further questions as to the abortifacient nature of some chemical contraceptives, and the fact that they fail and can lead to pregnancy. And then the question is, what becomes of this new baby in this new life? And here we have now in Ireland a legalisation of the destruction of unborn life in the womb, which seems perhaps a convenient way to dispense with the problem of an unwanted pregnancy. And that's a human life that is being deprived of its mother and father and family. And is this really the path that leads to life? We had in the first reading, was it yesterday morning for our Lenten journey, choose life. Pick between blessing and a curse. Choose life and you will be blessed. And it seems to me the way of again, liberal and unbounded expression of human sexuality leads on a path of pain and sorrow and loss and death, really, if the destruction of the unborn life. How is that a blessing? That can only be described as a curse. Why would we choose that path? And yet we have so many voices nowadays, so many proponents of just expressing yourself. That American expression, it's hooking up, just casual relationships coming and going, leading to untold pain and hurt and woundedness. Again, and this, oh gosh, and this is why we have such a beautiful sacrament in the Divine Mercy. Jesus, Lord, I ask for mercy, that we can bring our broken, fragile, weak nature in this area of human sexuality to the Lord in confession and find real healing and find peace, but also strength to try to stay on the path, to avoid the temptations to self-indulgence and self-gratification and promiscuity. And that's a path of life. That's a path of blessing. That's a path that is to freedom and the proper integration and expression of my capacity that is God-given for life and love. So it's a lovely catechesis to enter into and to see what it is God wants for us, to share that we might have life to the full and blessing to the full, not a path that leads to pain and sorrow and hurt and loss and even death. That's not what the Lord wishes for us. So I better leave my catechesis there for today. Again, it's a wide and broad subject, many avenues to explore there as well, to bring to the truth and bring to the light. And maybe help me on that path if you'd like to share and encourage me to continue the conversation, perhaps in one area or another too. Good, it's 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for being with me today, and good that we can pray for our dear friends who've been so hurt and wounded, and bringing that to prayer now as we pause for our Angelus and our midday prayer.